Well, thank you everyone for joining us for the XTP Hustle. This is our second episode where we're going to talk about the importance of data and how you're establishing your vision in your startup. And just like our first episode, we have a whole bunch of mentors and advocates and experts for our reverse accelerator, where we're sharing how we're building our startup to get their advice and to give you the transparency and opportunity to see how this process works to help you with your own ideas and the other things that you have a passion for building on your own. So, as Melissa's bringing up the slides today, I want to just introduce some members of our team. So we have Melissa Sassi, who is our CEO and founder for our project here. My name is Doug Winnie. I'm the Chief Learning Officer for our initiative here. And then some people that are here as well. Lala, who is our project management officer, and others that couldn't make it today but are part of our amazing team includes Aladdin, who's our chief technology officer, Ziad, our product officer, Muhammad Salah as our chief marketing officer, and Gabe, who is our lead content creator for everything we're doing in our project. So let's talk about our agenda today. What we're trying to do is repeat these sessions so that they have a repeatable process and flow for how they go. We've done our welcome introductions. We're going to talk a little bit about what is XTP and how does that represent the opportunity that we feel that we have across the world. Recap our last episode, and then we'll have a topic conversation today around data. We'll have our keynote speaker give a little bit of a talk around the importance of data as you are building out your ideas and your vision. We'll facilitate some guest introductions and talk about the data that we have for our particular project and where we've gotten some of those data, to the importance of qualitative and quantitative data, and show the assembly and the aggregation of what we've put together as the basis for our own startup for the XTP Hustle. We want to get some feedback from all of our mentors to push us and to challenge us about what we're going to do, and then we'll wrap up with questions and answers. So XTP is essentially entrepreneurship that is focused on that is agnostic to location, geographical region, and other areas around creating and building opportunities. We're looking at how we can build skills to help with digital literacy and how we can help people prepare for the future of work, which includes professional development skills, entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship spirit. What are some of the interpersonal and social and mindfulness skills you should have as you're entering into this type of opportunity? And then what are the digital skills that will enable you to be successful no matter where you are? So that is what XTP is. And our hustle that we're doing here is a reverse accelerator where we want to share with you where we're going through the development of our own startup, share that with the world for you to hear the types of conversations that you have with mentors and advocates to help strengthen and develop your story as you go on throughout the process. One of the things that a lot of these things happen sometimes in a bubble, or sometimes they happen independently or privately, but this time we're going to do it and share with all of you for those of you that wish to get into entrepreneurship or build your own ideas and to know what to expect as you get started. Our topic today is going to be around data. So there are three main areas we're going to talk about, which is the market research and how do you create that problem statement and back it up with the market opportunity that you have for this particular idea. If you remember, I talked about the importance of quantitative and qualitative data. That is the basis for your mixed research methods for how you're doing things inside of your data that you're going to propose with your various projects. And we'll go into a little bit about what those are and show you and demonstrate how we've been able to collect the cross-section of all those different types of things. And then finally, we'll cover some basic best practices around relying on trustworthy sources, demonstrating that there is a problem, and creating and finding data that will really influence your market and influence those that you are partnering with to showcase the real opportunity that is in front of you that your solution is uniquely poised to solve. All right. So, Melissa, would you mind introducing our guest today? Melissa, you are muted.
All right, good. I was stuck. I couldn't get off of mute. So what I'd love to do is, well, Latif, I'd love for maybe, you to quickly introduce yourself. I hope you're, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second because I want to make sure that you can actually see who our guests are. So let me stop sharing. Well, Latif, are you there and can you hear us?
Yes, good day, everyone. I can hear everyone clearly. I hope you can hear
Excellent.
me
So
as
tell
well.
us about you.
Yes, hi, everyone. I'm Bolu Tife, and I'm excited to be here with everyone here. I I actually happen to be the president of the Youth Special Interest Group within the Internet Society, and basically outside that, I'm a director at a nonprofit which we started up 2 years ago called Digital Grassroots. And with Digital Grassroots, we try to reach out to a lot of young people and improve them, improve their digital skills. And we do this voluntarily, and it has been quite an interesting journey so far. So I think here I'm actually representing the ISOC youths, and I'm very excited about today's topic, which is data. Because personally, I've also been involved in data science some type of way. I've taken some machine learning courses, and I think this would actually be a very interesting topic for us to deliberate on. So I'm excited to see everyone. Thank you very
Awesome.
much.
Awesome. Thank you. And Bullet, tell us where are you dialing in from, or where are you calling in from, and where are you from?
Oh yeah, so I'm from Nigeria, Lagos. I currently live in Lagos. I reside in Lagos, and I'm dialing in from Nigeria, which is in Africa. So I'm really glad my network is good this time. So excited to meet all of you.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I am, as everyone knows, I am a huge fan of Internet Society, and one of the reasons that we invited Abu Latife to join us today is, if you think about our target market, we'll talk about that in a second. It's all about young people between the ages of 15 to 18 and 18 to 24, and so I think as entrepreneurs and as business leaders, or people just coming up in their careers, understand that it's important to have your audience, your team, reflective of your audience. And so for us, since young people are our target audience, it's really important for us to have youth at the center of our design, and we kind of see it as for youth, with youth, and by youth. So thank you, Latifi, for joining us. Sochi, can you do a quick introduction of how you fit into the world?
Yes, sure, sure. I am a technologist, folks, living here in Silicon Valley for the last 25 years. Came from India in '94, left my PhD, which I was doing in economics, econometrics to be more specific, and just moved here. I had to leave it in between. And when I came here, when I was in India, actually, I was working for a think tank while I was pursuing my PhD in a capital for a state, and then we used to do a lot of socioeconomic sort of data analysis, like studies for the government, for state governments, and for the central government in India. So that's where I learned the importance of data. Of course, during my masters and all that, like when you're studying economics and statistics and all that stuff, econometrics is all about data, right? But actually, I saw that in action first time there, right? So when we were doing the government was doing any big programs, they're spending, let's say like $500 million, which is a lot of money in India, on a project like stopping atrocities against women or something like that. Like they want to launch a program, and many times they will do a study before they launch the program, and they will give us that study to be conducted in the field. We will get the census data for the states they want to launch the program in, or for the area they want to launch the program, and we will get the secondary data, as it was said earlier, like qualitative data and quantitative data. So we'll get the secondary data from the field, sending people into the field and doing surveys and stuff like that, and get the real pulse of the situation, and then marry that data, and our scholars will publish that report and give it to the government. It was government sort of sponsored most of it, those programs. And when I moved to US, I started working as a programmer. Giving you some background on like where do I fit in, and when I say something, why I say that, you will understand that a little better. I started working as a programmer with through AT&T at McDonald's Corporation headquarters in Oak Brook, Chicago. So they had tons of data. Like when you buy a Big Mac, what else you buy with it? Like that was the data we needed to do marketing, marketing for McDonald's. Like they want to do promotions in different countries, they sell different products and so forth. So they have like billions of transactions a day. Back then they had billions of transactions worldwide a day, and today they might have even more. So after that, I joined a company called Visa, which you guys all maybe are aware of. It's a international brand. So is McDonald's, I guess. And I worked there for 3 years. After that, I joined a company which went public during .com days. That was a lot of fun, like flying around all over the world, putting up the B2B exchanges.
Yeah, I miss traveling all around the world.
Yeah, you do. Yes.
Yeah,
No,
I
you
miss
are all
I
over the
miss
place.
even though I am, I did fly on Friday. So and I think now you've worked at Oracle, you've done some really cool things. What are you doing now, Sarbjeet?
Yeah, actually, yeah, I was going to cut through that quickly. Lately, actually, I've been involved with startups. Like after my tenure at Rackspace, I interacted with 500 startups incubator in the Bay Area, which Dave started here, and that's number 2 incubator in the Bay Area for your record, and they get a lot of traction and stuff like that. So I used to go to demo days from the Rackspace days, and I got that bug from there, the startup bug, which I had earlier from Commerce One, because we were a startup, we went public at that time. Yeah. And I got involved there, and then I invested money into my own startup, our own startup, actually not my only, so a bunch of partners in there, and that's in Berkeley here. And we have taken about 100 startups through that program so far. And I am an investor in there. Like I'm not a VC. I interact with VCs. We bring VCs to the startups, and we bring the people who do the like law, the legal side
So
of
do you
it,
have your
and
checkbook
marketing.
open for us then, I guess?
Yes, if when the ideas are good and they're in my domain, which is B2B, yeah, I can take a look at those. And
Awesome,
I think
cool,
more than checkbook, actually, I had some points written down actually late
cool.
last night about this talk.
Okay, good.
Is like there's money is of 2 types: there's smart money, and I just don't call it dumb money. Smart money and money, right? So you don't want any money. If you
Yeah,
have a
that's fair.
choice, you go for the smart money, even if it's a little more expensive, because that
So
money.
let's hold that until we get to the keynote, and then we can pick back up on that thought. I want to make sure that we have enough time to hey Annie, can you mute your phone if you don't mind? I think we're getting a little bit of background echo. So I think if we could wrap up the introduction and get to the kind of rest of the folks, then we can circle
Oh,
back
is that the format?
on
I
the
didn't know
keynote.
that.
It's all good.
Sorry.
It's all good.
I thought it was my time to just
No, not
do
yet.
the whole
Not
thing.
yet.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
you're good though. You're good though. I know we like to we've been on many
Okay.
calls
Let's roll
together
it.
and go with the flow. All
Okay.
goodness. So let's pick up
Next.
on that. So we'll pick up on that in just a second. But I want to switch over to Annie, who Annie graciously decided to join us. It's midnight, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe 12:30 in Australia, where Annie is. So Annie, tell us about how you fit into the world.
Sure. And hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, even if I did have to. I am still in my pajamas, so please don't judge me.
We can't tell.
Hey, everybody. So my name's Annie Parker. I work for the Microsoft for Startups team, and I lead all of their equity and inclusion programs around the world. I've been at Microsoft for a little over 2 years. And prior to that, I've run a number of different corporate accelerators here in Asia Pac, and then also in Europe, and across, gosh, where else? The US, many different places. Anyway, I've seen thousands of startups pitch. I've helped to co-fund through those programs over 300 startups now. And there's not a lot of things that I haven't seen when it comes to mistakes that have been made, co-founder breakups, all of the things that happen along the way. I absolutely know the power of data. And I also know the power of not listening to or not understanding the data when it's even in front of you, because you are so belligerently focused on what you think is the right idea in your own mindset or in your own team. And I think sometimes it's really hard to see the wood for the trees when it comes to data. So I think this conversation is going to be fascinating. In parallel to my corporate work, I also founded a couple of nonprofits as well. So I too care about encouraging kids around the world to be digitally literate and give them the skills they need for the future.
Awesome. Thank you. So Steve, well, I met Steve originally when I was at Microsoft. As most of you know, I'm an ex-Microsoftie, so I'm really excited that Annie joined us today with all of the depth and breadth of knowledge that she has from her career. Annie is both a friend, a mentor, and hopefully maybe sometimes a mentee. I don't know. Maybe we learn from each other. I think so. All right, Steve, are you with us? Can you share some insight into who you are?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, we can.
Excellent. Yeah. So hi, my name's Steve Johans. As Mel said, her and I go back a few years here from her Microsoft days. My background, 25 plus years, kind of energy infrastructure innovation. I'm a serial, I guess you'd call social entrepreneur. Worked in corporate America and large companies, running global energy practices, and then ventured into the entrepreneurial world. And primarily my heart and passion is really focused on this idea of kind of bottom up, what I call hyper innovation. So I got very frustrated seeing the rest of the world have a lot of things and the majority of the world and developing countries not have it. And so I kind of committed myself to, traveling around the world and trying to figure out how to solve that. And so I've started I have a company that we launched that when Mel was at Microsoft, they put a decent amount of capital in that company that's operating in India. I've got another company now, Village Solutions, where we're focused on East Africa, opened up an office in Addis Ababa. We're in the process working with the U.S. government, U.S. Trade and Development Agency, to launch one of the more innovative smart village projects, potentially in the world. Working very closely with folks like SES Satellite, Microsoft, and others, with this idea of solar power satellite communication and reinventing the way or thinking about how infrastructure can be developed and deployed from the bottom up. So things like water systems, housing systems, smart units, things of that nature. And so I've enjoyed. Mel and I have gotten to be very close friends. She's a nut, and that's why I love her. And we're out there doing some crazy things, and it takes that kind of mentality.
Yes,
So,
and we're going to do more crazy things.
Yeah.
Steve and I have a very good friendship and partnership, and I'm looking forward to hopefully some big news at some point. Maybe let's see how things continue to transpire.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share, Steve?
Yeah, and the only other thing from an entrepreneurial perspective, I mean, literally, there are no boundaries, and I think the biggest message I always give, to entrepreneurs is, lead with your heart, find things that you're passionate about and committed about. And we're in a very unique time in history. And I think we really need world changers and people that think and operate that way and be fearless. The world needs that. So I think entrepreneurship is a great way to show yourself and to do great things. And then the other thing, I think this is a great forum what Mel and Doug have put together here. And I've had the chance to speak to a number of universities and travel around the world giving talks. But this environment of mentorship and collaboration and on a global scale, I think has tremendous potential. So it's a pleasure to be here. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. And then Mohammed, hopefully Mohammed's here. Mohammed, we recently met on a talk that we both did, a startup talk focused on empowering Tunisians, which, if I'm not mistaken, Mohammed is from Tunisia, lives in Turkey, and does a lot of really interesting work in conflict zones with migrant workers, with refugees, and I look forward to having Mohammed introduce himself. So, Mohammed, are you here and can you hear us?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Melissa. I'm glad
عايشك
to join
عايشك
you
برشا.
today. He speaks Tunisian now. Mohammed Ali Kahlani. I'm a consultant in entrepreneurship and marketing. I'm coach and mentor with several incubator in Turkey and consultant for NGOs working and operating in crisis zone. You know, in Middle East, it's a little bit hot here. I have several experience with startups as a consultant or business developer. Lately, and because that matter a lot, we launched, I'm a co-founder of Digital Istanbul. It's a new community working online. We are now 220 members, and we got in our first launch day 250 membership requests in addition. I'm graduated from France, from Bordeaux Cat entrepreneurship, and from Mauritius in enterprise strategy. Thank you.
So, Mohammed, I don't know if you know this or not, but I did one of my masters in Bordeaux at Bordeaux Business School. So I don't know when you were there, but we could have crossed paths in the streets of Bordeaux.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
All right, cool. I think I have everyone who has been assigned to kind of be our mentors for today. Did I miss anybody, Doug or Shah? Did I get that right?
I think we got everyone.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen, and then I'm going to jump through our data, and I want to spend more time going through, kind of the feedback of our data. But before that, Sarjeet, can you pick up where you were? And I know I interrupted you on kind of going through, your talk, but if you could pick up and kind of finish up in just a couple of minutes of where you were, that would be awesome. And I apologize for cutting you off earlier, but if you could pick up on where you were, that would be great.
Oh, no, not a problem. So I was talking about I think at some point I talked about the importance of data in pre-launch and during launch and even post-launch. The data is everywhere, right? So um, having said that, I think it was already previously said, I think Doug said that, like the qualitative versus quantitative data. It's important to have that data, I think mostly to convince people, not yourself, to people that that idea is viable and there's a demand for it. And having said that, that will go into the deck, actually, pitch deck for the investors and so forth, right? And customers also, right, which is the sales deck. Having said that, I think the data will be sparse for many of you, especially if you're entering new markets. So keep that in mind, that data might not be available. So in that case, you have to go to adjacent markets or similar markets, or within the same domain, whatever data is available, you try to make sense of that and then extrapolate from there. I actually read a lot about innovation, and I go to universities and talk to scholars who write books about this. I'm a, like, information junkie or DJ, you can call it. So I kind of mix and match all that stuff. The one theory, there's a theory of disruption which came from Harvard University, from Clay Christensen. Like, he's known for that theory. We lost him this year, by the way. He was a great guy. So he wrote a bunch of books on innovation. The one way to innovate is to go to the non-consumers, right? So if you fight with the big giants trying to compete with, let's say in certain domain, if you're in high tech, you try to compete with Amazon or Microsoft, or it's not going to work, right? So how do you penetrate that market? It's like going down the market or going to the consumer markets, and that's where the data is very sparse. And I just want to highlight that little part. Um, what else I can talk about? Yeah, actually, I compare my prepared my notes in general. What are the top few things which I have seen the patterns from the market, working with the startups and how those startups like traverse, and what's their runway, and then where they fail, why they fail, that kind of stuff. I think I can talk around those topics if you guys allow me to shed some light. Or do you want me to just focus and stretch my mind on data only?
Yeah, I think what we'll do is let's jump into our presentation, and then I think you and the others can give us feedback on kind of how do you see the data that we've collected so far.
Okay.
We'll review kind of what our problem statement is, and then we'll open it up for you to just really tear it apart. Whether that's good or constructive. I purposely didn't send anyone any material in advance because I wanted you to have it raw and real. So nobody's seen any of this yet, only Doug, me, and Shaw. So, well, actually, I take that back. Gabriel and Lela have seen it. So, all right, cool. So, I'm going to just share my screen again. And then there we go. Let me put it back into presentation mode. All right, good. I'm gonna zip through this part, but because not everybody took part in all of the different or the different session that we had last time, so I'm just gonna review what our problem statement is. So, really, and I'm not gonna read all this to you, but I think we've all heard that when it comes to preparing for the future of work, many of us are lacking, and this is not just a problem for youth, but again, our target market is youth, but it's digital literacy, entrepreneurial spirit, and professional skills. Some of us are better than others when it comes to these things. There's a lot of content out there. So we know that if you have access to the internet, you've got everything at your fingertips, but not everything is practical, not everything is gamified, and some of the stuff that's out there is out of date. When it comes to youth, a lot of the learning opportunities, especially in formal education, is based on theory or extensive reading, and this challenge really exponentially impacts women and girls and those living in the global south. So I'm very excited to have Bulletin here with us or Bulletif here with us today, to have the voice of what does he think from as a Nigerian, and how does he think these things resonate in other parts of Africa. So again, our target market is 15 to 18, 18 to 24. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share with you a bit of the things that let's start with the OECD. So according to the OECD, obviously, young people see technology as an opportunity to create job opportunities. I was actually surprised that this number, wasn't higher. I expected it to be higher. What I did expect is that a lot of young people don't necessarily have a positive outlook on finding a job that they really want. I know me, if I think about myself, and I can't be considered a youth anymore at 44, but I feel like I'm a young person and spend most of my time with young people. I know when I was finishing university and finishing my education, I struggled with figuring out how do I find that job that I really want. And the first job that I took was not really the one I want. It was just a job. And um, I know that I also, as many young people, worry about, whether my skills are going to be relevant, and, whether there's going to be demand for them, and, how we all are preparing for the future of work. That said, according to the OECD in their survey, young people would welcome, more help in getting a job in school. Again, I'm going to walk through all of the different data points that we have. I purposely didn't, kind of set this up, or we purposely didn't set this up as a like 1 minute pitch, because we want this to be a deep dive into all of the insights that are kind of bringing us to formulate our product. And again, our product is e-learning platform that's gamified and is all about preparing for the future of work. Again, that concept of extrapreneurship, or the extra skills that you need to be prepared for the future of work. And that's where we get the name, again, XTP. So according to the World Economic Forum, the future of work really involves, not just the technical skills, but a whole lot of other stuff, whether that's cognitive abilities, content skills, social skills, problem solving, and all of these really lead into preparing for the future of work. You notice that it also looks at team building and relationship management or resource management skills. So being prepared for the future of work is not necessarily about, let me go get my domain expertise, whether that's technical or non-technical. And again, we focus on the digital skills aspect of it in our platform. That said, regardless of what career you're going into, even if you're applying for e-government services or you're applying for a job, it requires, some level of technical skills no matter who you are. So we know that there are a lot of drivers of change. The whole work environment is changing. We've seen that with COVID-19. We know that there's a proliferation of mobile phone usage and data usage. In some parts of the world, looking at the youth population, it's growing. We know that gender inclusion is, a large factor. And I wouldn't even just necessarily call this gender inclusion. I think it's inclusion in general. Again, I pulled this from the World Economic Forum, but I think that inclusion in general is really taking up a big conversation and a lot of struggle, especially in my home country. So I'm from the United States, and all of us are seeing what's happening in the news, and it's happening all over the world. That the conversation and action that needs to happen is not just about gender, but race and ethnicity, and other types of inclusion, whether that's age or accessibility, etc. And we also know that there is an increase in the crowdsourcing economy. So there's a lot of stuff out there that tells us, what are digital skills. A lot of them are antiquated. We put this big, kind of star up here saying that this is inaccurate, and we know that digital skills are lacking. All of the data is out there to tell us this. I don't actually believe that this chart is accurate in terms of the basic skills, because if I dig into, and this came from the ITU, so the IT branch of the UN, if I dig into the methodology that they've used to define what what basic digital skills are, it's not aligned to the actual skills that people need to make meaningful use of the internet. And again, it's those extra skills like emotional intelligence. So we know also, and this is something that came from the Economist, digital literacy and content are lacking, especially in the global south. If you look over at the right in terms of the bottom countries, wow. I have a lot of work that I do in Pakistan. Think about that. 36%, out of 100. Wow. How do we make sure that people have the digital literacy skills, the cybersecurity skills, but it's also important to make sure that we've got local content. I'm not a big fan of this, 79% of local content, because I talk to people all over the world who speak, languages other than English, other than other than Spanish. And we know that a lot of the content that's on the internet leans more toward a specific subset of languages. But it's also important to have, relevant content. And we know that some of that is lacking, especially in the global south. So what do we mean by digital intelligence? Just as a reminder, for what we call it, it's not just about, hey, can I send an email? Can I access the internet? Can I do an internet search? Can I write up a resume? It's safety and security. It's emotional intelligence. It's how do you communicate? It's how do you manage your footprint? How do you decipher between real and fake news? How do you decipher data? How do you manage your financials? So having financial literacy. What are your rights? How do you manage your identity? And how do you make sure that you've got healthy and balanced usage, so you're not, let's say, taking up addictive patterns? As someone who is hyper connected, I probably have a thing or two to learn about this as well. So now that we've talked about digital skills, let's talk about entrepreneurship. There are a number of reasons why someone might, decide to be an entrepreneur. It might be based on a specific problem or circumstance. I believe that every entrepreneurial endeavor should be about solving a problem, having a market opportunity, but some entrepreneurs are getting into things to look at an efficiency, an efficiency play based on their personal circumstances, which in reality can be related back to factor driven and be all about solving a specific problem. I also believe that, if it, and this should be the last one, should be innovation driven instead of efficiency driven. So apologies for having that duplicated there. But, all of these reasons to be an entrepreneur should all be about innovation as well, regardless of how, this is defined here. So we know that there are a lot of barriers for youth entrepreneurs. We know that entrepreneurship skills are not necessarily being nurtured. Um, Young people may not have the experience level. There may be a lack of awareness of what's possible. In some markets that I spend time in, whether it's Tunisia or other places around the world, there are often negative social attitudes about what job you should go into and whether you should be an entrepreneur or not. As a young person, you may lack financial resources, access to a network, and there also may be bias in supporting youth ventures when you're thinking about, large venture capital funds. Now, we've also got the gender divide, causing a challenge. We know that when it comes to, going into work, there are a lot of challenges, whether that's, perceived or actual. And we're looking at kind of changing a number of these things, like how do we improve the access to talent? How do we drive, confidence in, women and girls? How do we instill, or how do we provide access to role models? Naturally, we're not going to solve everything with our platform, but these are some of the things that are driving us to think about the things that we're doing. We also know that when it comes to women and girls, there is a larger population of women and girls in office and administrative roles. What can we do, through our platform to bring more women and girls into these other areas that require more problem solving, that are all about managing people and incorporating, true digital skills, whether that's basic digital skills or someone who's rolling up their sleeves in data, someone who's rolling their sleeves and taking on a role of, creating mobile applications and what have you. We shared this last time, but if you think about the size of the market currently, and naturally we're not going after the entire market, but we know that the size of the entire market when it comes to e-learning is 200 billion. We know that a lot of young people are at home from school due to COVID-19 challenges. We know that there's growth expected when it comes to e-learning, and we know that content providers take a big piece of that $200 billion. We also know that there are a slew 3.2 billion smartphone users in the world. Yet we also know that 49% of the world is not connected to the internet. So lots of wicked challenges, lots of opportunities. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to stop sharing my screen. And what I'd like to do is turn it over to Steve. And I want to get your feedback first, Steve, on wow, that's a whole lot of data. That's a whole lot of stuff. And I went through it really fast. What do you think? Do we have a market opportunity? What are we missing?
Well, so you might just give you my quick, gut instinct, what was just presented to me. So I think this is an area where you like your heart, mind, passion, and intellect is like totally lined up. So you got great alignment in what you want to do, and you're very motivated. And you want to, I know you, and you want to make these things happen. The thing I think now is you're going to have to, you're kind of looking at the world. Like what you just presented to me is like everything. Okay, and so so I think you're going to have to carve. You're going to have to kind of look at that now. And you're going to have to carve out, and you're going to have to find.
Like, which is that market we're going to go test and learn? Like, is it Ethiopia? Is it Nigeria?
Not only that, before you even like say geographic. So I would just tell you, like, keep peeling the onion back, but forget geographic right now. And I'll just give my example, okay, and then it'll be helpful because this is my strategy that and it seems to work across different areas. But I'm a big believer in this kind of the other 50% that aren't connected, don't have access to hardly anything. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if I wanted to carve a market out in this day and age, that to me seems like the most interesting place to do it because,
Mm-hmm.
you're not competing against,
So online and offline content to make sure
yeah.
that if
And
someone
so
doesn't have access to the
this
internet.
idea of, and I know where your heart and passion is to reach and touch people in these kind of developing markets, whether it's Pakistan, Tunisia, East
Yeah.
Africa, wherever that is,
Yeah.
right? So it sounds counterintuitive,
Mm-hmm.
but if you can focus on how to get digital learning skills in the hands of people that don't have access to digital, as opposed to those that do, then you're starting at least to like zero in on, because then it starts focusing on where are those people that don't have access to digital? How in the world am I going to get them on digital? And then how am I going to, while I'm getting them on digital, train them up on the right way? So the beauty of what I think you're trying to accomplish, just because I know you besides this presentation, is you have a tremendous opportunity because of all that you're bringing with your background experience, global networks and insights and in corporate relationships, is when you get to them and you're the first person that's giving them the digital, if you do it in such a way that you're bringing them up and educating them in the appropriate way, the right way, and give them the kind of content that's real and local to them and fits them, and bring them up to speed, then you're onto something. Then it's really interesting. Okay, as opposed to saying,
Yep.
"Here's the world."
I
Okay.
think you're absolutely right. And I think we could do a better job of, maybe even talking about, some of the things that we're going after, as that is not necessarily in this deck. So for those of you
Yeah.
who may not be familiar with some of the things that we're going after now is, we've been collaborating with Steve, we've been collaborating with others to see the communities that are not connected, what are what are interesting ways that we can give them access to devices, access to the internet, and access to this content, for the first time ever. Within that, 51 or 52% that's not, that 49% that's not connected. So I love the idea of us partnering together in the ecosystem, when it comes to whether it's partnering with a mobile operator or partnering with a satellite provider or partnering with an energy access or ISP, of how can we gain access to, those individuals that are getting online for the first time. So that's their first introduction to, computer science, or their first introduction to, wow, I'm going to go online for the first time. And I'm not just using it for, Facebook or WhatsApp or whatever. Okay.
And I'll give you just last one. I'll give you a real. I mean, this is a real story that really happened. That hopefully it'll maybe zeroed in. But the whole thing shifted my entire mindset. Literally was because I had a big company trying to do projects from the top down. And I had a group of engineers. I brought on all these high-powered, high-paid engineers that were working for me. I'd raised a bunch of capital. We were thinking develop markets. We were thinking big picture, kind of like what some of the stuff you're talking about. And I watched a YouTube video one night, and this young gal was in a rural village in Tanzania, and she was in the dark at night, and she had her cell phone in her mouth. She had the light on, mounted the cell phone in her mouth, and was doing medical treatment on a woman on a table. And my light just went off like that, and I was like, "That's the most amazing thing I've ever seen." So I went in the next day. I had all my engineers around the table. I said, "Watch this video and tell me what you see." And they all watch it. I'm waiting till they see when she puts the phone in her mouth and turns it on. And I said, "Did you see that?" And they said, "Yeah." Well, she just put a phone in her mouth, and what's the big deal? I said, "She did not put a phone in her mouth. She put a microgrid in her mouth. She put a power plant. She charged it up. She mounted it. She had utility." I said, "Forget all this stuff. We have to figure out how to do business with her." And it started this whole change in philosophy of what we started calling the hyper innovation lies in the hands of the invisible woman. That we were going to innovate for the absolute last person at the end of the value chain. And we did that on the infrastructure side, so connectivity infrastructure. There's no reason it doesn't. In my view, it always translates to everything. So that's, I mean, my point is everything's going to become more localized. We're all kind of starting to live in villages. so if you can zero in on that piece and boil down the 3.2 billions and billions and billions and get down to the girl and the woman in the village and how you're going to go upwards as opposed to we're up here, we're going to come down. I think
Got it.
you'll really zero in.
Hey,
Got
Melissa,
it.
I want to connect something that Steve was saying to Sarvjit and then also bring it back to Annie. Steve, when you were talking about the data, like there was the talking about the social aspects of it, people that do not have access to information, they're going to be getting it for the first time. We're going to need to rely on what are the communication norms that are in those communities for us to be successful. But then, Sarvjit, you were talking about you're not going to have data for that. You have to really find other ways to get that information. So
This is where I think local collaboration is essential when we're talking about, bringing that down to the invisible woman in Ethiopia or wherever.
right.
I want to switch it then over. You mentioned Annie. I want to switch it over to Annie. Annie's been in this space forever, and I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on things, Annie. What are we missing? What could we be doing differently? What
Sure.
advice do you have for us?
First things first, I agree with Steve's point around this sort of untapped potential of people who aren't yet digitally native or even have access to basic internet. So, statistic for you, I live in Australia. It's one of the most wealthy countries in the world. 24 million people live here, and still 10% of the population still don't have access to the internet, which is batshit crazy to me. 2.5 million people cannot access the internet in this country. And by far, the people in that 2.5 million are indigenous people. Now, this is so far removed from what's a right and sensible opinion. The indigenous culture here in Australia is 60,000 years old. It's the longest continuing indigenous culture in the world. Think of all of the innovation, the knowledge that this community of people has, and yet they still don't have digital skills. And we are missing out on their innovation, their creativity, and their contribution to our economy. Massive missed opportunity. So it's not just about the giving them the skills, it's about what we're missing out as an economy as a result of that. So I'm giving you that as an anecdote. The other thing that I would recommend everybody go do, because you're never going to be able to get data on every single thing that you need to get data on, from sources that are perhaps things like the World Economic Forum or a HBR article or what have you, or something that's been researched. So something that I've been learning a lot about recently, it's basically discovery. How do you do good discovery with your potential customer base? A book I would recommend you all go and read, it's called The Innovator's Dilemma, and it's by Clayton Christensen. It's a short read, but basic principle here is
what was the name of the author again?
Yeah, Clayton Christensen, the same guy I mentioned from Harvard.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Sarvjit.
It's a very, very simple read, but it's a hard thing to often remember, which is you can read as much as you can around your problem area or around the problem that you're trying to solve, and you can read as many articles, but until you speak to your actual customer and get genuine feedback from them on what really they need or what their circumstances are and the problems that they see and live every day, and until you actually listen properly, you may fall into the trap that I see a lot of founders fall into, which is, I think I know the answer.
That's 100% spot on. And what we've been doing in Tunisia is when we opened our center, we started testing and learning over the last 5 years, which is not something that I mentioned. And so we've been testing and learning with our curriculum and utilizing that in a real setting, being taught by young people to young people, but in an in-person fashion versus, through the system. And really kind of taking feedback along the way of, what does Ziad see? What does Zia see? What does Farah see? What to all of these different individuals see. And, in kind of my nonprofit, we've been testing this out with tens of thousands of young people in about 12 countries, again, in an offline fashion. I'm excited to read this book, and Doug and I are gonna definitely go out and check this out. So we're really thinking about user-centered design. For those of you who may not know, I'm working on my PhD right now, which is all about the digital inclusion of indigenous populations in the U.S. And so I've been spending a lot of time talking with indigenous people, and again, there are many different types of indigenous people from around the world, but thinking about what do they want? What do they want access to enable their lives? And in many cases, you know how it goes. When you ask your users what they want, they may not know, and it may be unperceived, things that they don't perceive as a need. I'd like to switch it over now, because I know we don't have much time, but to Latif to share, kind of what he's thinking about, the information that's been shared so far, and what do we need to do? What are we missing? So, Latif.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. I think it has been quite informative so far, and the presentation actually captures a couple of important details. So I'm just going to be speaking from the perspective of young people, because I'm a young person, and I think part of the data that we've seen was the fact that a lot of people are not actually as concerned about the future of jobs and probably how things are going to pan out in the future, like them losing their jobs or whatever it is. However, I think this largely is to the fact that many people, especially in sub-Saharan Africa and Middle East, usually don't even have access to the internet on a basic level. So I feel for many of them, they still foresee the digital innovation, digital transformation as a futuristic thing. But I think, and that's why it's very important to make them see that this is something that is happening already. Because I've been at a conference where I was talking about machine learning, and everyone was like, no, let's talk about things that apply to us here in Africa, which was really outstanding, because a lot of those things are already going on, artificial intelligence projects in Africa. So I feel for young people, it also boils down to basic literacy on some of these things, and then being able to go directly to the market, I think, like Steve said, and get feedback from them on what they really feel concerning some of these products.
Excellent, thank you. I'd like to switch it over to Mohammed now, and I know that we've only got a few minutes left, so maybe Doug and I need to think about how do we do a good job managing time, and it's probably me that needs to do the better job, or we think about whether this is an hour and a half conversation in the future. But Mohammed, can you share with us kind of your thoughts?
Yes. I think from my perspective as an African born, and I'm now in Turkey, and I see the difference between our culture and the Turkish culture, and maybe I have some of my sister in America and in France. I believe it's data and technology relied on the culture of the country and the culture of people. That Kenyan company called M-Pesa or something like that was the
Are you thinking about M-Pesa?
First one who made mobile transfer, money transfer in the world. So I believe it's not a problem of means, but a problem of culture to push initiative and to encourage people to go through digital world and make a good experience. Maybe Melissa was in Tunisia and know how is the culture between coast side and internal side. In coast side, people are
on the Libyan border, or on the Algerian border, down in the Sahara. Yeah.
So in the coast side, people are more connected. They are more open. When we go into in the internal district in the country, we found another culture and a reticence, or people refuse to engage with data and with technology and with with the digital world. So I believe we may have to change culture to make people more open to absorb the new trends and accept change. Then we will make an upgrade through time and make people connect to that more often.
So give them a reason to want to adopt something that's, solving a problem in their life or bringing them joy or whatever the case may be, solving or creating some kind of value in their life. But, I think the other thing that I heard from you is, as we think about, what market or markets are we focusing on beyond just youth, because that's something we are thinking about, but we haven't narrowed in on it yet, is, even when in a particular country, knowing that there are different cultural dynamics, even at a country level, at a
Yeah.
regional level. Even if you think you've got one homogenous, culture inside of one country, it's not necessarily the case. Things may differ between tribes or, groups of people within the country. Sarvjeet, I know we're up on time, but I want to make sure to give you time to share some feedback. So apologies for going a little bit over, everyone. So Sarvjeet.
No, I'll keep it very brief. Actually, I will just give you 3 points, 3 keywords to remember, which we already talked about between Steve and Annie and Doug and everybody we were talking about. And I think the one is the micro consumption. It's the age of micro consumption. And when I say that, like if you look at our mobile phones, which are smartphones these days, like you will hardly see any application which is popular, which does more than one thing, or maybe
Hmm.
max two. So do not try to do more than 2 things. Believe me, it doesn't work. It will not
Okay.
work. I've seen it
Okay.
time and again. I have write a lot of software, a lot of applications, a lot of systems in so many societies in different parts of the world. So
So don't
micro
try to
consumption.
build. So don't try to build an army. Think about what that village or that building is that you want to build, and narrow in on that versus going too big. Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
don't go too wide, and also don't build a pain. Build a painkiller, not a vitamin. That's another analogy we use. Vitamins versus painkillers. So it should kill somebody's pain, right? It's not like nice to have, right? And change, as Steve said and Annie said, has to be digestible for that culture. You have to just work in the periphery of the culture. Like you want to push them a little bit, nudge, but you can't change the cultures. It takes hundreds of years to change cultures. So do not try to like say, okay, you have to do it
So
this way.
work within the confines of culture and norms.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that micro consumption and digestibility of the change go hand in hand. And I'm maybe a little more theoretical, but I can give you a lot of practical examples, like from real life, how we did it and
Hmm.
how it worked. And the third thing is that innovator's dilemma or theory of disruption, and they actually have another piece of work from Harvard, which is called theory of things to be done. Theory of things to be done. Actually, just it's very small piece. Just read on that. Like it's doing the market research in real time. Like there's a very famous example of a milkshake. Like why people hire a milkshake in the morning. So it's very famous sort of case study there. So go to the non-consumers. That's what they say. Go to the non-consumers when you want to penetrate new market. Go down the market. Like don't go from top to bottom. Like go to the people who are not consuming that service, right, at all
Okay.
in that domain. Yeah, I think
Okay.
those are the 3 things: like non-consumers, digestible, and micro consumption. All
Okay.
right.
Just
Awesome.
real,
Thank you.
real, real quick, Mel,
Yeah.
just back on that. So I just want you just to shift your way of thinking a little bit.
Cool.
So I know you're very focused on kind of digital literacy and kind of almost from a teaching perspective, but
Yeah.
you may want to think of yourself more as you're in the village learning business. Okay.
Oh, I like that.
Okay, so if you can get really good at being in the village learning business and then adopting
Exactly.
the platforms that fit that village, if you can get that crack that code, that's the code to crack. Okay, so if you think of yourself as a village learner as opposed to a village teacher, you could shift the way you think and how you adapt your solutions and principles, because everyone's given, I think, some of those kind of principles, but you could be in the village learning business, and that'll rethink the way you adapt yourself to your solutions.
All the
Yeah.
ideas are all on my Post-its. I love it.
Yeah,
Awesome. Mine's in my
think
notebook.
well said. I think I had that thing also in my mind, which I slipped. Is that I think the digital learning is extension of learning. It's you cannot have not have learning and then you're doing digital learning. I think
That's fair. I don't think that we would come in and
the biggest
go ahead.
the biggest mistake companies make is they think they're going to come in developing markets and teach them their way. You got to go into the village and learn their way and help and assist and lift.
Exactly. Okay, good. Are there? I know we're over, but are there any questions from anyone that we can? Oh yeah, go ahead, Danny.
Into the chat. So similar to what Subject was just talking about around the jobs to be done theory. There's a great article in Harvard Business Review that I've just posted into the group chat, so you can learn a little more.
Awesome. This is good. Anyone have any questions? And again, I know we're over, so apologies. We need to do a better job managing time, which is always a challenge. How do you prioritize? How do you clone yourself? Nobody needs a clone of me. But any questions from anyone or any other last comments?
No, I mean, I will just say, reach out to mentors. People are willing to help. Do not hesitate to reach out to people when you're starting a company and or learning and or unlearning stuff.
All right, perfect. So we're going to do this all over again. Not the same session, but join us on our next episode. It'll be on the 23rd of June at the same time, and the registration will be the same. So we'll have that up there for the next session shortly. And please join us. Please reach out through Twitter if we're not connected personally. I'm at Mentor Africa with a K, and I'll just put that in the chat window. So if anyone wants to reach out and share ideas, so let me just put that in there right now.
And I'm at SF Designer. I also did the same thing.
Yeah, if you want to hear anything, you want us to share anything next time, that would be helpful for you. Please, please give us a shout. And thank you to all of our mentors. You all are, both personal friends and mentors, and hopefully colleagues to be, if not already colleagues. So, Doug, any last parting words?
I thank you to all of you. I mean, a lot of you, I'm meeting you for the first time or known of you, or we've associated a little bit, but I'm looking forward to collaborating with all of you much more in the future. And to everyone that joined us today as a guest, I hope that this has been valuable to provide this transparency about how this process works and to show that when you're doing this, you need to put your vulnerability out on display for people to share and collaborate, and for you to approach your idea and what you're doing as a place to start, not as a place where you're finishing. So thanks to all our mentors for joining us, and I'm looking forward to the next episode.
Yeah, so from our village to yours, from these
village learning. I love it. Okay.
I do too. I love it, and the villager, because that's what Sarjeet's little nickname is.
The villager. I'm from a small village.
Yeah. So from our village to yours, from this village learner to you, village learners, have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you for joining our journey. I know we're going to learn a lot. We're going to adjust as we go. But thank you for sharing feedback with us, and have a wonderful day. For those of you who have not become entrepreneurs yet, good luck in your entrepreneurship journey. And I hope this gives you insight and inspiration to fuel your passion, your purpose, and your entrepreneurship journey.
Thanks, Melissa.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Nice meeting you.
Take care. Bye-bye.